The courtroom was cold enough to chill the soul. Across the room, Jasmine sat quietly, watching as her husband, Robert, signed their divorce papers, with his mistress, Jessica, proudly by his side. What made Jasmine's heart tighten wasn't just a betrayal. It was a smug smile on that blonde woman's face, fanning herself like she was enjoying a show. Robert, with his gold pen gleaming under the lights, hesitated for barely a second before signing. Then he looked back at Jessica, who smirked as if she had already won. She even spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Now Robert can finally have the life he deserves, with someone more fitting. The arrogance in her voice cut through the air like a knife. But Judge Martinez, a seasoned man with 3 decades on the bench, had seen scenes like this far too many times. And that day, he was about to turn their celebration into a painful lesson neither of them would ever forget. Jasmine Williams, just 34, had once believed her marriage was built on love and partnership. She'd studied business administration and put her own career dreams aside to help Robert build his company. Every penny she saved, every hour she worked, every ounce of trust she gave, he used to climb higher. But instead of sharing his success, he shared it with another woman. For months, the signs had been there. Robert came home late with ridiculous excuses. His shirt smelled like a perfume she didn't wear. When Jasmine tried to talk about the future, he acted like she was a burden. And then came the company party, where Jessica, dripping in arrogance, laughed and said, "Wow, Robert, your wife has such a natural tan. Must be genetic, huh?" That wasn't just an insult. It was humiliation, calculated and cruel. Jessica started showing up at Jasmine's favorite restaurants, posting pictures online, wearing jewelry Robert once claimed he couldn't afford. It was a public campaign to erase Jasmine, to make her feel small, unwanted, invisible. People noticed. Friends avoided her. Neighbors whispered. Invitations stopped coming. It was like the world quietly agreed to erase her existence. But Jasmine wasn't broken. Beneath her calm face was something fierce, something waiting for the right moment to strike. As the divorce papers slid across the table, Robert's lawyer, a smug man in a tailored suit, barely looked at her. "Your turn to sign," he said, "so we can end this like civilized people." Jasmine picked up the pen. The room fell silent. Even the air felt heavy. Robert tapped his pen impatiently, already picturing his new life. But what he didn't realize was that Jasmine had a plan, one that would turn his arrogance into regret. Because when you've been betrayed, the best revenge isn't loud. It's smart. And in the next few moments, Robert and Jessica were about to learn that underestimating a woman who's been hurt and who's learned how the game is played can be the biggest mistake of all. So stay tuned, because what happened next proved that the story wasn't about loss. It was about justice. And Jasmine Williams was no one's victim anymore. Jessica should never have taken the place meant for Robert's wife. But she didn't attack all at once. It started slowly, carefully, like a performance rehearsed to perfection. When she first joined the company as an executive assistant, Jessica made sure everyone saw her as refined, confident, and superior. At events, she'd correct Jasmine's words in front of others with a fake smile. "Oh, how interesting, your pronunciation of that French word," she'd say sweetly. "It must be hard when you didn't have access to these things growing up, right?" At company barbecues, she'd steer every conversation toward expensive wines, European vacations, or designer brands, topics meant to make Jasmine feel small. When Jasmine admitted she hadn't traveled much, Jessica would glance at her with mock sympathy and whisper to other wives, "Robert deserves someone who can match him in sophisticated environments." Always just loud enough for Jasmine to hear. The humiliation reached a breaking point during the company's anniversary party. Jessica had organized the event herself at an elite country club, an expensive place where Jasmine instantly felt out of place among the wealthy, mostly white guests. When it came time for speeches, Jessica stood up, glass in hand, and smiled. "I want to give special thanks to Robert," she began. "He's always been so inclusive in his personal choices. It's truly inspiring to see someone embrace diversity, even when it can be socially challenging." The room fell silent. A few awkward laughs echoed, but most people just stared, some with pity, others with quiet agreement. Jasmine sat frozen, her heart pounding. And Robert, who should have defended her, said nothing. He just looked down and played with his napkin. That night in the car, Jasmine confronted him. "How could you let her talk about me like that?" she demanded. Robert's calm cracked into irritation. "You're imagining things, Jasmine. Jessica's just being professional. Maybe you should learn from her instead of starting drama." "Starting drama?" Jasmine repeated, stunned. "She practically said you lowered yourself by marrying me." "That's not what she meant, and you know it," he snapped. "You're twisting everything because you're jealous of her education, her confidence, the way she carries herself." Those words hit harder than any slap. Jasmine realized then that the betrayal hadn't begun in the body. It started in the mind. Robert had already chosen his side, and it wasn't hers. From that moment on, Jessica's campaign of humiliation became relentless. Photos began surfacing on Robert's social media. Him and Jessica at company events where Jasmine was not invited. When she asked, he said, "It's business, not the right place for wives." But then Jasmine saw Jessica's Instagram stories, candlelit dinners, champagne toasts, whispered smiles at business meetings. The truth was impossible to ignore. When she confronted Robert with screenshots, he didn't even flinch. "This is work, Jasmine. If you can't trust me, maybe the problem is you," he said coldly. "Jessica understands my world. She's educated, multilingual, professional. I need someone who can represent the company properly."
That one word, properly, echoed in Jasmine's mind for days. It was the moment she understood that Robert no longer saw her as his partner, but as an obstacle. Not because she lacked talent or worth, but because she didn't fit the image he wanted for his new, polished life. The final humiliation came at her workplace, a private school where Jasmine served as the educational coordinator. Robert arrived for a meeting about a possible partnership between his company and the school, and he brought Jessica along. During the discussion, Jessica smiled politely before saying, "Not that I'm questioning the coordinator's competence," she glanced directly at Jasmine, "but it might be worth bringing in outside consultants with more international experience." The school principal, a traditional woman who admired status and appearances, nodded thoughtfully. Jasmine sat in silence, watching as Jessica subtly planted doubts about her abilities in front of her own colleagues. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just about losing a husband. It was about being erased, professionally, socially, and personally. But what Jessica didn't know was that Jasmine wasn't finished yet. The quiet woman she tried to humiliate was about to become her biggest mistake. Jasmine had worked hard to build a respected career at the school, earning the trust of teachers, parents, and students alike. But after that humiliating meeting, things only got worse. In the parking lot, Robert didn't waste time pretending anymore. "Jessica's right," he said coldly. "The school needs modernization. Maybe it's time for you to look for something more suited to your profile." Jasmine stared at him. "Suited to my profile? What profile, Robert? Just say it." He looked away. "You know what I mean, somewhere you'd feel more comfortable." That was the moment it hit her. She hadn't just lost her husband, she'd lost the illusion that love could overcome prejudice. Robert's betrayal went beyond infidelity. He wasn't just in love with someone else, he was ashamed of the woman he'd married. But Jessica made a fatal mistake. In her arrogance, she believed Jasmine was powerless. What she didn't know was that Jasmine's silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Every insult, every cruel smirk, every whispered remark, Jasmine remembered it all. She wasn't just an educational coordinator. She was a woman who'd faced prejudice in countless forms and learned how to survive it, with patience, intelligence, and quiet strength. Robert and Jessica thought they were winning, but Jasmine was already planning her move. She wasn't going to fight them with anger. She would use something far stronger: proof, precision, and perfect timing. And that moment came sooner than anyone expected. During a routine visit to the bank, Jasmine noticed a few suspicious transactions on their joint account. Since Robert was away on business again, with Jessica, of course, she decided to go in person and ask. The bank manager, Mr. Thompson, had known them for years. But when Jasmine questioned the transfers, his expression shifted from polite to uneasy. "Mrs. Williams," he began cautiously, "it might be better to discuss this with your husband present." "Why?" Jasmine replied firmly. "It's my account too. I have every right to know. After a long pause, Thompson sighed and pulled up the records. What he showed her made her stomach drop. In just 6 months, Robert had transferred over $200,000 to an account under the name Jessica Martinez. Apparently, Jessica had even changed her last name to sound more professional. But that wasn't the worst of it. Robert had secretly opened a line of credit using their home as collateral, putting Jasmine's future and her security at risk, all without her knowledge. Then came the final blow. Thompson lowered his voice. Your husband was here last week asking how to transfer all assets into his name. He said you had agreed to sign the divorce papers. For a moment, Jasmine felt the world tilt. The man she had trusted for over a decade wasn't just leaving her. He was stealing everything they had built together. That night, Robert called from what he claimed was a business trip in Boston. Jasmine answered calmly. How's the conference, honey? She asked softly. Very productive, he replied smoothly. Learning a lot from our partners here. Jasmine smiled to herself. Just 2 hours earlier, Jessica had posted a photo online, her and Robert clinking champagne glasses at a romantic restaurant in Miami. That's wonderful, Robert, Jasmine said, her voice steady. I'm very proud of you. The silence that followed was sharp. Robert hadn't expected kindness. He'd expected confrontation. And that moment of calm threw him off balance completely. Because while he thought he was in control, Jasmine already knew everything. And she was preparing the kind of response that would make both him and Jessica wish they had never underestimated her. He looked almost guilty when he spoke. Jasmine, we need to talk when I get back. I know, she replied softly. And I'm ready for that conversation. But Jasmine's preparation wasn't emotional. It was tactical. The next morning, she did something she'd never imagined. She hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one of the best. Dr. Patricia Leon, a divorce and asset fraud specialist with a reputation for dismantling deceitful husbands in court. Dr. Leon's office sat high in a glass tower downtown. Her walls were lined with certificates from Harvard and framed news articles calling her the shark in heels. After hearing Jasmine's entire story, the lawyer leaned back in her chair, eyes glinting with sharp intelligence. Your husband thinks he's playing chess, she said. But really, he's playing checkers. You, Mrs. Williams, are about to learn the real rules of the game. At 45, Dr. Leon knew exactly what Jasmine was up against. She'd grown up in a poor neighborhood, fought her way through Harvard Law, and spent years dealing with powerful men who underestimated women like her. Men like your husband, she said with a faint smile, think women like us should be grateful for the crumbs. What they forget is, we've known hunger longer than they have. That makes us dangerous. Her plan was simple and devastating. Jasmine would keep up the act of the broken, submissive wife while quietly documenting everything. Bank transfers, emails, receipts, and conversations. Meanwhile, she'd subtly encourage Robert to speed up his own downfall. Arrogant men always hang themselves, Dr. Leon said. We just make sure the rope is in their hands.